So hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to So we are back with a brand new movie on what if Naruto was faced gods and heroes in Marvel. Naruto's Harem movie, but before we start, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now let's begin the story. Naruto smirked as he looked down at the titans that were looking at one of their own like he was crazy. And while he himself would admit that the plan was crazy, it was nonetheless a great plan if they wanted to survive. Titan was overpopulating, and if it continued then all the resources would replenish. They had to make a choice. Well, not one choice, since there were many other choices. Like, oh I don't know, leaving the fucking planet and going to another. But alas, beings would be being and just be arrogant. No matter who they were. Going back to the Titan who was angry and sad that his people did not listen to him, he went to ship that he had prepared. For some odd reason. He watched as the purple-skinned being entered, turned it on, and left his planet. Shame he could have stayed to watch his people die. Naruto placed his hand forward, down to the titans, and without any words he used the new power he recently had gotten. The beings looked up, seeing a bright purple light coming above them, not knowing it was the last thing they would see alive. The god balled his fist and executed all the titans with a small wave of its power. It destroyed all life forms that existed in the whole planet, while also making the whole place impossible to live on. Naruto looked at his work before looking at his hand that was glowing purple, veins and bone included. Such a waste of power on that dumbass, he said, talking about the celestial he stole it from after beating that thing close to death. XXX. He tossed the ball up a bit before catching it and throwing the ball, with a stone inside it, away into space. Why carry a stone when you can make one of your bones into the power's new source to hold its power? XXX. That idiot is seriously too arrogant sometimes, Naruto said, using his Rinnegan to extract the power from the liquid. It slowly went into his blood before traveling all the way to his eyes. The violet-colored eyes changed red for a quick second before blending into the eye's original color. The god let a little of the power in it to reform again before taking said missing small power and fully having all of its power. Making it full. XXX. Naruto walked forward slowly and hummed. He could choose all of them, but then Odin would be pissed and demand who the hell took them. So it was some for now. I choose you. He touched one in the arm, making her disappear in a swirling vortex, transporting her to his dimension. You both are sisters. He touched another before going to her sister that was a couple of feet away. Cutie touched another in the arm. Naruto turned towards Hela and saw her looking at him. He smirked at her, turning his eyes red and arm glow purple. With a wink he went back to his work and kept on saving those he felt were worthy. XXX. Slam. Naruto chuckled at the attempts Ego was making. You would think a celestial would at least train, but no, they rely on their powers. Such a shame, because if they had trained then they would have lasted longer. I'm sorry, he pretended to clean out his ear. I didn't really hear you there. The god put pressure on the celestial's head, making it scream in pain. Please stop. I surrender. Ego screamed, begged. The Uzumaki looked down one more time before kicking it, knocking it out. Celestial his ass. XXX. He laughed while looking at the entity in front of him. Maybe I should use your power, you know, since I already mastered the mystic arts, Naruto said, forming two black orbs that rippled. Dormammu looked at him and nodded. He feared talking, not because he didn't like it, but rather he wasn't told to. The god in front of him showed him how easy it was to destroy his dimension. It was scary. Which was something the entity was not used to or ever felt in his immortal lifetime. Alright, now that this is done, the god's clothes all turned pure black as he opened a black portal. I heard that a certain region recently got a new element. He saluted the entity goodbye and went into the portal. Wakanda, Earth. The moment he entered, he was met face to face with a man that wore something similar to that of a Black Panther. He did feel the power that the man had in him, but what he wore, he had to admit, was awesome. Maybe he should create something similar. Ungubani, who are you? He said in a deep voice. Naruto quirked an eyebrow, not understanding the language before using his telepathic techniques and quickly understanding the language that the man spoke in. Along with finding out how exactly the man had power within him. The thick so a god the man's body showed he was surprised, but it faded as quick as it came. He did not say he was the god, but merely a god. The Uzumaki did not want to upset the man. Diabono, I see. The dark-skinned man did not move or do anything aside from nodding and speaking to him. He was a king after all, so it was his duty to protect his people, even from gods. He wasn't just going to allow the god inside the nation. He could use some mind manipulation. Nah. It wouldn't be fun. He'll have to use his words. Sigh. XXX. Thank you, beautiful, Naruto said, kissing the Asgardian female on the lips before closing the portal. He looks back at the village and smirks. The god already had control over space, but having the stone's power wouldn't hurt. Though he did question Sif about as to why the king had brought the cube to Earth, but she did not know why too. Oh well. XXX. Naruto shrugged looking at Howard. The man had asked him for money to help in his company and Naruto gave it to him. By a lot. And now the man was giving him twice the amount. Relax, just keep it, Naruto said with his arm around Peggy's shoulders as she leaned on him. Howard looked at him before giving the god a grateful smile. It will help improve his company more. Oh, Naruto put his hand forward and threw the man a scroll. Researcher told me to give this to you, take care of it. With it he and Peggy both disappeared in a flick. XXX. The god looked down at the man and hummed. Steve Rogers. Quite the interesting fellow. Do you think he'll make it? Peggy said grabbing his hand, the ruby ring on her shining brightly and squeezing tightly. Naruto looked at the serum and then at Rogers. Yeah, he'll make it. The water I made him drink will make sure of that, he said. The water was actually his blood that would help the skinny man in taking the serum in. His powers weren't in it, so he didn't have to worry about the man getting any. XXX. Sir, what shall we do with him? A Hydra soldier asked the commander. Menma, aka Naruto. He walked forward and looked at the man that was unconscious. Bucky Barnes. Put it on him. XXX. Naruto ducked the yet another soldier before grabbing its head and snapping it. Come on Titan, is that it? He put his hand forward and made all the soldiers that rushed at him into little roaches. He then aimed the arm at Thanos and pointed it at him. Better hope your strength is strong, he said before reappearing in front of him within a millisecond and punching the god in the chest. Ah. The Titan spit out some blood and grabbed the god's arm. He headbutted the red head, but to his shock, it didn't even budge the man a bit and only hurt him. Man, who knew that the great Thanos was this weak, he smirked at the bleeding and dazed Titan. XXX. It seemed like that little bitch, Ego, had arrived on Earth. Should he greet him or not? Yeah, it was long overdue for the Celestial to apologize to him. XXX. So, the Titan decided to take a little girl from one planet and then another. XXX. Knock. 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 Many turned to the door of the hospital and saw Naruto in a business suit. So it seems the tumor the dumbass planted in her had finally killed her, he said walking forward, and some tried to stop him, but he phased through them, shocking them. He sniffed the air before holding up a finger. Now, don't take her soul, I don't want her to leave just yet. Still shocked, all looked at him in curiosity, she's just an innocent victim in Ego's plan. Naruto walked towards the woman and put a hand on her head. The hand glowed white for a second before he retracted it back. Bring her back please. The air turned cold for a second. Naruto smiled down at the woman. A child should never lose a mother. Bip. All turned to the heart monitor. Bip bip. He just loved to play God. Wait, he was. Bip bip bip. Naruto smirked at the shocked looks. He took out a scroll from inside his suit and slowly put it on the stand next to her bed. The Uzumaki turned back to look at the family members and friends of the woman before nodding to them. When Ms. Meredith wakes up, tell her to open the scroll as it has to do with her son Peter and Ego. With it he walked out of the room. Nobody never noticing something go into his shadow. Shadow clones really were amazing. XXX. Well damn, seemed like the king thought it was the best idea to kill his own brother. Wow, the kid who was kneeling next to his father turned to look at Naruto. He motioned for the kid to stay silent, casting a spell unknown to the kid to keep him quiet. The Uzumaki went to the dead man and silently breathed out a cold breath that went into the man's mouth. The claw marks on the man's chest faded before said person shot up wide awake. He looked around and touched his chest where the claw marks were. He noticed his son and immediately brought the shocked kid into a fierce hug. The kid snapped out of his shock after a few seconds and cried onto his father's shoulder. Naruto looks around and drives his attention to left side of the room. The man who had been revived notices him and immediately asks, "Who are you?" The Uzumaki looks at him, "The banished one," he said, making the man become wide-eyed. Yeah, the banished one. A name the first king of Wakanda had given him. TCH, it wasn't his fault that the man couldn't give his wife a good fucking. Naruto merely helped out in that part, and what did he get in return? To be banished from Wakanda. Fucker. But Bashenga knew he couldn't fight one-on-one against him, so he just told Naruto to leave. And the god did leave, but not before fucking all of the man's guards, his wife again, and all the wives of the 5 patriarchs. Heh. It was quite honestly fun though. They tried everything they could to get him, but he just smirked and flashed them the middle finger before jumping into a portal he created. Prince Njobu immediately got on one knee and bowed. The banished one was a legend, but also hated due to what he had done. Legend because he had helped them in growing their technology. Hated because, well, you know why. The Wakandan citizens were told to be careful due to his status of a god. And while many dismissed the god part, they nonetheless followed procedures. Relax, I came here due to what your brother had done. The prince clenched his hands, and to have it, so the kid doesn't lose his only parent left. He does, after all, have to see the sunsets of Wakanda. Jobu looked up and gave the man a grateful look. He didn't care how the god had brought him back from the dead, but he was grateful to the man. Thank you, Jobu said. Naruto nodded. It was shocking, but not that much, towards what your brother had done. He shook his head to think that he would leave his own brother's son behind, just like Bashenga can't do shit right. Jobu chuckled while his son looked at them in curiosity. Now, why don't you introduce me to your son? The prince nodded and waved for his son to go to him. The kid stood next to his father and looked up at the god. This isn't Jadaka, but here he is known as Eric Stevens. XXX. Naruto smiled as he looked at the director and his bosses. Do you really want to order the person who has about 10 snipers aimed at you and your guards? The Uzumaki didn't really direct that threat to Fury, but it could. Each member narrowed their eyes and looked at him. They wanted to call him out and say that it was a bluff, but each then saw a red dot pointed to one of their bodyguards. Come on, put me on the map, put me as threat, but a bounty on my head. He gave them a smirk, but if you do then, well, the people will find out all the things that each government has been hiding. He rubbed his chin, planning the attack on the towers, hiding the fist, covering for the multiple soldiers that are currently spying on certain counties and people. He had them by the throat, and they knew it. We can't have that, now can we? But then again, I do like innocent people going after me only for them to be killed, and the people do want to know the truth. Each council member looked at each other and then looked back at the god. Very well, Mr. Uzumaki, we will have you protected. They had to swallow their pride, whether they like it or not. He had shown them today. Naruto was not one to bluff and to fucking mess with. But. Man, were you really this much of an asshole when you met your wife? Naruto put his arm around the general and tightened his grip. Ra swallowed deeply, in fear at having the god put his hand on him. He had been informed by his superiors that Naruto was not to be fucked with, exactly those words. They were that afraid of him. Many tested the waters and they paid the price. Did they receive medals? No. Naruto made sure of it. I only do what's good for the United States, and my daughter, Banner, is a threat. Ross finished and immediately felt the hand tighten on his shoulder. Fuck. Really? You do what's good for the United States? Naruto chuckled before he let go of the man's shoulder and walked over to where Ross's daughter was. He knew that Bruce didn't mean to hurt the woman he loved, so it was a bit sad that it all happened like it was on purpose. The Uzumaki turned around and vanished into the air. It really was sad, but oh well. And he wasn't being a dick. He has a plan to reunite the two lovers together, but for now he'll let the hunt go on. New York City, New York. The god reappears in a chair that was inside of a mansion. He puts his feet up on the table and grabs a fruit that was on a bowl. Now, he just waits. As I was saying, tomorrow won't do. How about in a month? Tony Stark, the son of his old friend Howard, came into the room. Right behind him was his assistant, Pepper Potts. They stopped their conversation and look at Naruto, whom didn't stop eating his apple. Tony checks his security system and even asks Jarvis how he had entered inside without triggering the security system, but the AI couldn't give him one. Naruto finished his apple and throws it to a garbage can before turning to look at Tony and Pepper. You know, you really are like your father in the playboy category. Tony twitched at the mention of his father, which isn't shocking, just saying you really are like the man who I gave the money to start Stark Industries. Tony's whole body freezes and slowly turns to look at Pepper, whom looked at the man in confusion. He looks at Naruto's face before remembering the words that both his father and his old butler had said. I have met a god with whisker marks, and one day you will too, Tony, Master Tony. Naruto looks at Tony and smiles. I assume you remember the words your father and Edwin both said. He asks as the man slowly nods. When his father had said that, along with Edwin, Tony always thought of them as some men both got high at the same time. In a sense, Tony thought they were fucking crazy. The redhead chuckled. They actually were all high when he told them to say that. Such a crazy week. Anyways, I came here to talk about some things. Anthony. The CEO of Stark Industries looked at Naruto and quirked an eyebrow. What do you know about the reactor? March 26, 2010. Sink. The ground beneath the soldiers turned into quicksand and sucked the men deep into the ground. The others, who saw the whole thing happen, aimed their weapons at him and started to fire. Naruto waved his hand and the bullets whirled around him before vanishing into thin air. In a second, he was in front of one group of men. They tried to fire and hit him, but the weapons turned into dirt while the punches froze an inch close to him. Now that wasn't nice. The Uzumaki grabbed one man by the neck and kicked another in the stomach. He slammed the man into the group before snapping the neck of one who was close to him. Naruto went into his kimono and grabbed a grenade. He lodged it deep into a fallen soldier before vanishing. The redhead reappeared inside the cave and camouflaged into the walls, slowly going deeper into the cave. He reached a metal door that was secured by 4 guards and smirked. His shadow disconnected from under him and quickly went to the guards, sinking each into it. Naruto looked down at his shadow that returned and smirked at the screams that were being heard from it. It was just a dark shadow dimension, sheesh, no need to be pussies. Using a bit of X-ray, he looked inside the room that was closed by the metal door and saw his old friend Sun there, working on some armor. Interesting. Let's see how this works out, hopefully Peggy doesn't kill me. Naruto created 4 shadows that took the forms of the 4 soldiers he killed. He'll go back to his home and just wait as things go, his shadows will tell him what happens. That's all he came here for. To check on the man. November 3, 2010. Naruto looked at Bruce, whom was fixing something for the manager. He owned the whole company due to some mind altering, so he was paying the doctor some good money. To be honest though, he was just doing it so he could fuck Bruce's hot neighbor. The Uzumaki looked down and smirked at woman shhhe, so continue chupando, he said as Martina deep-throated him. Maybe he should have her as a wife, yeah. She was quite honestly on the same level as Peggy, despite it being her second time sucking dick. And he wasn't being a bastard, but come on, who wouldn't fuck her? Bruce couldn't because of his condition, so Naruto swooped in and fucked her. Now she was his. It really wasn't that hard to understand. Naruto, it's done. Bruce came into the room and noticed his friend's glazed look, but just ignored it, while also not noticing the sounds his neighbor was causing under the desk. The redhead nodded and took out a load of cash, giving the fugitive doctor 40,000 Brazilian real. To fix some small thing that Naruto had caused on purpose was a lot of money, but he didn't mind. Money was money. See you next week, buddy. May 22, 2011. Naruto laughed as he slapped Tony on the back. Relax, Tony, I'll help you out when I'm done building mine. Iron Man sighed and nodded before leaving with his new assistant, not noticing her slip away until it was too late. Naruto walked back to his work and put on a metal watch. He looked at it closely and then pushed a small button that was on it. Instantly black armor made out of nanonites covered his arm, with red markings on it. Flexing his arm, he smirked at the flexibility. So, my dear beautiful wife, Naruto said, still looking at his arm, are you going to come out or just stand there looking at me? Natasha smirked at him before going to where he was and kissing him. She pulled back and looked at him, it was a great view though. Yeah, he pushed the button again and made the nanonites go back into the watch. The god took off his watch and gave it to her. Wanna try? May 27, 2011. Naruto thanked the man and grabbed his lunch before heading towards the door. As he was about to turn the corner, he bumped into a woman, making her fall onto the floor. He looked down and quickly noticed the beauty of said woman, but nonetheless helped her up. I'm sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going, Naruto said as the woman smiled at him, blushing just a tiny bit due to the way he helped her up. It's alright, I should have not gone fast, she said before looking at her watch and noticing it was getting late. Oh no. I'm going to be late to pick up Peter. Naruto turned to the nearest clock and saw it was 2:40 p.m. Kids usually got out by 3. He turned back to the woman and decided to help her. If you want I can take you to your son's school. He asked as she looked at him for a few seconds before smiling and nodding. He's my nephew and thank you, she said. She quickly bought some snacks and beverages and both went to Naruto's car. They got in and quickly drove to where the nephew's school was at. He turned to the woman and saw the relief that was on her face at the fact that they were going to make it early. Most likely due to her job. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Naruto, he said as she realized she also forgot to introduce herself. She put her hand forward as they stopped at a red light and introduced herself. May 31st, 2011. The kid with an Iron Man helmet puts his hand forward and aimed at the drone, just like Tony did. The drone aimed at him, but luckily the kid was saved by his hero. Tony came up behind him in his armor and blasted the drone away before flying away, but not before telling him he did a great job. Peter. June 1st, 2011. Yawn. He was told by many that the Asgardians were tough and that they were basically invincible in fighting. So, why the hell were all of them on the ground unconscious? Odin, the king of them all, was the only one standing but barely. Do you really want to continue? I mean look, this all would have turned out the same even if you were in your prime. Naruto sat on the man's throne looking down at the man. The king gripped his spear and rushed towards him but was impaled in the chest by the red-headed man's arm. Odin looked at him one more time and saw everything distort, turning everything back to the moment the Allfather had spoken to the god that appeared before him. I just love showing my enemies the future, it always makes them think twice. The king gulped and motioned for his guards to stand down. The power the man before him had, it was scary. 5 stones. That already makes the man the most powerful being in the whole universe. What do you want? The old king demanded. Naruto shrugged in response, nothing, I just wanted to see what the whole buzz was about with Asgard. He looked around and nodded, and now that I've seen it, I have to take my leave, a hot ant is waiting for me to fuck her. December 31st, 2011. May hugged her nephew and then her new lover in happiness at finding out she was pregnant. Her ex-husband and her had tried for years to have children but couldn't due to him having a low count of sperm. But now she had her second child growing in her womb. She considered Peter like a real son and to her he wouldn't be replaced, so to her Peter was like her firstborn. Peter smiled and hugged his aunt while Naruto thought about the power he gave his child. I hope he or she uses it for good. His daughter's son was in Uzumaki, so to them the word good was actually referring to causing mischief and pulling a shitstorm of pranks. May 3rd, 2012. Shut up you blabbering idiot. Loki screamed at Naruto whom put his hand on his heart. Who the hell are you calling an idiot? Dumbus. Both glared at each other while the others in the jet looked at them in curiosity. Eventually though, Loki backed down from glaring and looked at the people in the jet. Seems you have been busy. He was talking about being in a jet that had two people that were dressed in odd things. One was dressed in multiply clothing while the other was dressed in metal. Naruto shrugged, not really, just been doing the same old thing. The god put his hands on the back of his head and relaxed. Fucked one man's girlfriend, made another scream my name in front of the man. Loki chuckled while Steve coughed and Tony smirked. Natasha shook her head and focused on driving the jet. Same old Naruto. December 25th, 2012. Nah, Tony could handle the Mandarin. He needed to spend time with his daughter, his wife, and his son. May had given birth to a demigod daughter that they had named Mary. He had treated Peter as his son, and the kid slowly began to see him as another father figure. Anyways, though. It was a lesson for Tony, Naruto wouldn't always be there to save his ass. He needed to do shit like he had done when he was kidnapped. Slap. Now he looked down at his daughter who had used her powers to slap him for ignoring her and not pushing her on the magical swing. Okay sheesh, a baby, and yet she can use her powers already. January 1st, 2014. Naruto looked at May and Maria as both women looked at each other. Peter was off playing with his sister and all but blood. I get that you want to have a baby, but May looked at her door and put her head down. Why did you have to break the door? They were still living in their ordinary apartment that was all but that since Naruto had put seals in it and made everything better. The door though, it was still the same. Until Maria had kicked it open and destroyed it. Maria blushed and apologized to her fellow harem sister. April 3rd, 2014. For a pregnant lady, you still have it, Natasha said as her injury healed and hugged her. Steve and Sam looked between the two but didn't ask anything. Both were Naruto's wives, so normal was out of the picture. They weren't going to question how the heck Nat knew she knew Maria was under the helmet. October 19th, 2014. Yondu, no. Peter screamed out as his father-in-law, but Blood was about to sacrifice himself so that Peter could live. Yeah, no, both men heard and turned to their left. Naruto stood there with flying with them as he grabbed a chip and put it on the blue-skinned man's neck. He pressed a button and a black helmet with blue markings made out of nanonites covered the man's head. The man breathed and gave Naruto a thankful nod, same with Peter, before going into the ship. Naruto smiled and heard a knock on some glass before turning and seeing his two wives there glaring at him with their arms crossed. Oh shit. Maybe he should remind them that he was the reason they got just a tiny bit closer as sisters. Just a tiny bit. Why do you side with humans? You see the destruction they bring and yet you join them, why? Ultron asked the man in front of him. He knew who he was and wasn't really going to try and push any of his buttons. A true god that can wipe out his whole existence in a second was not something he was willing to try. Naruto smirked, they're entertaining. He looked at the two groups and shook his head. If you give them a tiny amount of power, then they will use that to eventually kill you. If you give them knowledge, then the results would be the same in the end, no matter what it may be, it will always lead to destruction. He looked at Ultron, why? Because they are humans, you can't control them and you can't change them. Ultron nodded at the red-headed man's words before seeing him vanish. They can't be controlled or changed, but they can be killed for the better. May 5th, 2015. So, you're telling me that this hot and sexy foreign chick is going to join us along with Streaker over there? Naruto grinned and dodged the punches that Pietro threw at him, shocking the young man slightly. Wanda blushed slightly and nodded. Yes. May 6th, 2015. The moment Wanda let out a powerful surge, Naruto brought her brother back to life and quickly healed all his injuries. Pietro breathed in deeply and looked at the god. Why? He asked. Naruto looked down at him sadly, because still haven't used your powers for what they are meant to be. For the silver-haired man looked at him in questioning, to fuck other men's wives without getting caught. May 7th, 2015. The Uzumaki put his hand on Quicksilver's shoulder and grinned at the young man. You, me, and whoever else joins in later are going to fuck so many bitches. Pietro nodded, though he was worried about his sister ever finding out that Naruto was taking him on adventures just to fuck girls while also training on the side. What kind of boyfriend does that to his girlfriend's brother? A great one. He didn't go with his sister and joined the Avengers, but he joined a slightly better team. November 5, 2015. He's behaving weird, Mei looked at her husband and then at her nephew who had entered his room. Naruto quirked an eyebrow and then looked through Peter's walls. Sure, the seals prevented others from seeing but not Naruto, which was weird. He saw some power inside the teen's body spread all over and change him slowly. It's nothing, maybe he had his first kiss. May 4, 2016. The Uzumaki looked at the woman who had approached Tony and told him that she hated him and the Avengers. Wow, it really hurts my feelings that you hate me, Naruto mocked her for losing her son, angering her, get in line lady, you think you are the only one affected. Grow some balls and do something instead, coming all the way here and saying you hate us. Tony looked at him in shock. Everybody loses somebody, you are nobody special to us, what makes you think I will stop my actions? What makes you think I will change? Nothing, that's what you brought him into this world, so you knew what was going to happen later on. She glared at him and Tony and Naruto before storming out of the elevator. June 10, 2016. Naruto saw Vision's energy blast Miss Sam and hit Rhodey right where the arc reactor was at. He pulsed some chakra into his finger before vanishing away. With Tony, he flew as fast as he could trying to reach his best friend but was still too far away to catch him. Falcon was also trying to catch up to Rhodey but was on the same boat as Tony. Just as the military officer was about to hit the ground, a streak silver and blue caught him. Pietro grunted at the weight of the metal and the man inside but nonetheless managed to hold him. Damn, that hurt. Pietro pushed Rhodey to the ground and opened up the man's mask. They were lucky Naruto was here because if he wasn't then the consequences would have been dire. June 16, 2016. Naruto and Pietro both played against each other on a game of Call of Duty Zombies from a TV and console they brought in. It was getting crazy, but only because Naruto decreased his luck to make it fair. Quickly get Juggernaut. We're on level 99, we can't die now, Naruto screamed while Pietro killed a group of zombies with his ray gun, but it was a bit slower to kill them. Die. Pietro screamed. The four prisoners looked at the two men and sighed. At least it wasn't boring. Falcon saw a figure approaching and smirked. June 23, 2016. Chala came out of the Royal Talon Flyer with Naruto and Okoye by his side. Many saw him and queried an eyebrow before it quickly went away. Naruto looked around and hummed, things really have changed since the whole nation formed. Okoye nodded and guided him to Chala's mother and sister. Son is he? Ramonda looked at Naruto and thought back to what she was taught about him. But she had to make sure it was him before even doing anything. Shuri looked at him and instantly recognized the designs on the edges of the man's armor. Vibranium but different. Chala nodded yes, it is him. The new king was just lucky that his father wasn't here, cause if he was then he was pretty sure Wakanda wouldn't even be here. Ramonda swallowed slightly and nodded. She turned to the redhead and slightly bowed, something no king or queen should do to any other, it is an honor to meet you, banished one. Naruto looked at the queen in questioning. Okay. June 26, 2016. Eric looked at his mentor and nodded. Okay, your choice. Naruto shrugged and cancelled his illusion over the guards that were taking Eric toward Chala and the council. He was just following because he wanted to see who was it. June 27, 2016. Both Eric and Chala looked at the sunset beneath the panther's statue. Chala had beaten his cousin in battle and had struck a spear into his abdomen. Right now, Killmonger was taking his final breaths watching the sunset. Just like his father had described and said. Mind if I take him? Both cousins turned to their right and saw Naruto there eating some tacos. The king looked at the god and questioned him, why? Naruto walked forward and kneeled down to look at the spear inside Eric's abdomen. I know you don't want to kill your cousin Chala, unlike your father despite being your enemy, you are willing to save that family member instead of killing them. Eric smirked a bit also, he is technically no enemy, you didn't label him as such. Chala looked at his mortally wounded cousin and then at Naruto before nodding. Take care of him. Naruto put a hand on Eric's shoulder before vanishing in a flick. September 22, 2016. Peter watched as Naruto and his aunt danced. 1, 2, and bam. Naruto pulled Mei close to him, you do it right and you will get a kiss. Peter blushed then, after the kiss you take her to a hotel, pull her dress down, and Mei put her hands over his mouth quickly as Peter's face became even more red. Naruto. She glared at him. The god freed himself and looked at her, what? I though telling the way Mary was made would be a great way to say how it could go for him. Peter's blush faded as he blanched as the images in his head that were now replaced by his mother figure and father figure doing some things. Mei blushed and slapped her husband on the chest. They all heard the door open and saw Mary there with a stuffed giraffe in her hands. She looked at them each before giggling at the expression on everyone's faces. Mainly her mother and brother. Definitely didn't know you were that much of screamer. September 8, 2017. Naruto saw Carl leave before going to the now paralyzed man. Jonathan looked at him before seeing the redhead pull out a syringe filled with a grayish liquid. He kneeled down and injected the liquid into the man's back before leaving. Jonathan twitched as he felt the liquid enter his bones. April 1, 2018. Eric, you take right, and Pietro, you take left. Show these bastards your power. The things that Naruto hated the most were those who abused children, kidnapped them, or raped them. He and his two members both activated their suits before jumping down from the building. Quicksilver grabbed the two guards that were protecting the building and tied them up. Eric entered from the back of it and knocked down the guard. Oh. Both men kicked down the doors and went into the building. Men shot at Killmonger, but failed to do any damage due to his new armor. He grabbed his two spears and ran to one thug before slashing the man's throat. He grabbed him and threw him to another thug, kicking one who tried to sneak up behind him. Grabbing the man's gun, he shot at the incoming thugs. Quicksilver dodged the bullets that went past him in slow motion. He turned one man to shoot at his fellow gunsmen, low-swept two men, and threw them to another pair. Level 1, secured, Killmonger said through his earpiece. Pietro looked at Eric before nodding and running all the way to the top floor. Killmonger heard the thugs coming down the stairs and grabbed another gun from the floor. Thanks to Naruto's training, they didn't even feel or see anything when Quicksilver ran just a tiny spark. Eric's eyes turned slitted and smirked at the number of thugs that appeared. April 24, 2018. Naruto casted an illusion over Peter and placed a seal on the back of neck. He went over to his bedroom and smiled at his wife and daughter sleeping together. Flick. May would kill him if anything happened to Peter. The seal was just in case. His Wakandan fiancé had put one on her brother and mother. Peggy put one on her niece. Clint put them on his family. His wife Hope had put one on her dad and Scott. And lastly, he put one on Pepper for Tony. Thanos already got the Power Stone. He was bound to go looking for the next quickly. Naruto wasn't going to fight, he'll see if they can stop the Mad Titan by themselves. If they can't, well, he'll see. Dead bodies littered the ship as the ship burned from enemy fire. Upon the dead was man, still alive, holding on thanks to his blood in him. Rejoice, he heard Ebony Mach chant and commence a sermon dedicated to his lord, Thanos. The Mad Titan who wielded a golden gauntlet with 6 depressions in it for the 6 Infinity Stones. I have to say, Asgardian, you fought well, Thanos commented, but received no reply as the wounded man could only look at his brother, who stood a few feet away from Thanos, before a green beast attacked Thanos. Hulk the wounded god thought, but it was futile. Thanos was stronger, and in the final act, another Asgardian sent the beast away, hurtling through space towards Earth. A mistake, Thanos stated as he grabbed a staff with sharp end and stabbed Heimdall in the heart. Thor screamed at seeing his friend die. No. Ebony looked at him before using his powers to shut the God of Thunder's mouth, silencing him. He goes over to Loki and puts his hand forwards. A stone. Loki looked at him and was about to stab the alien, but was held by his enemy's power of telekinesis. Thanos walked over to the adopted brother of Thor and looked at him. I will not ask again, Asgardian, the Tesseract, making the man look at his defeated brother before revealing the Tesseract. The Titan smirked and grabbed the cube. He crushed the cube and blew away the glass that covered his hand, leaving only the space stone. Putting the stone on the gauntlet, he felt the power of the stone surge in him. Clap. 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 Thanos' moment of finally getting the stone was interrupted by the one person he hated the most. The one who had humiliated him in front of his whole army. The one who had also fucked both of his daughters Nebula and Gamora. Ebony scowled and stopped Thanos' children from fighting him. Sorry to interrupt your little moment of orgasm, but can we speed this up, Naruto said sitting on a chair while eating some popcorn. Thanos glared at the god before him. Why are you here, Uzumaki? The Titan asked, hoping he did not say that he was here for the Space Stone or the Power Stone or both stones. Standing up and going over to the two fallen brothers, everyone stepping aside, just decided to pay my dear old friends a visit, Naruto said, using the reality stone to turn the metal on Thor's body into dust. He turned to the Titan and motioned for him to continue. Thanos motioned for Ebony and his children to gather around him. Using the power of the Power Stone, he ignites for the ship to explode as he vanishes in a portal. Purple cracks start to appear around the three men as Naruto places a chip on both men's necks. Thor looks at Naruto. What are you doing here, Naruto? The god in questioning quirked an eyebrow and gave the Asgardian the same answer as Thanos, since he had asked the same question. Both brothers sighed and watched as more of the ship cracked. This is going to hurt like a bitch for you both anyway. New York City, New York. Tony looked at Bruce and at the two sorcerers. How much time do we have? He asked, wanting to be prepared for an incoming attack. Bruce looked at the billionaire and shook his head. No telling, he has the power and space stones that already makes him the most powerful being in the universe. Tony, if he gets all 6, the doctor didn't want to finish the sentence. He can destroy a life on a scale hitherto undreamt of. Steven finished. Tony leans against a cauldron. Did you seriously say hitherto undreamt of? He asked the sorcerer. Are you seriously leaning on the cauldron of the cosmos? Steven's cloak smacks Iron Man's hand. He looks at the cloak and then at the doctor, offended. I'm going to allow that, he said before pointing to the time stone on the Sorcerer Supreme's neck. If Thanos needs all 6, then why don't we just stick this one down the garbage disposal? He suggested, making both Wong and Steven shake their heads. No can do. We swore an oath to protect the time stone with our lives, Wong said. And I swore off dairy, but then Ben and Jerry's named a flavor after me, so Tony said as Bruce quirked an eyebrow. Stark raving hazelnut, Steven said, having both him and Wong tried the ice cream. It's not bad. A bit chalky. The hunka hulka burning fudge is our favorite, Wong added, making Bruce surprised that they now had things like that. Tony shook his head. Whatever, look, point is things change. He hoped that the sorcerers both went with his idea. Dr. Strange narrowed his eyes. Our oath will not change. It may be our best chance against Thanos. It may also be his best chance against us, Tony pointed out. Steven and Tony both glared at each other before hearing a knock. They turned to the open door to the sanctum and saw a woman with a small little girl besides her. Tony recognized her and was surprised that she would be here. May? Tony questioned as all men turned to the billionaire. May looked at him as the little girl rushed to the billionaire and hugged him. Tony? Phew, I thought I was going into a weird place or a library. Both sorcerers looked slightly offended. It could be considered a library, yes, but a weird place. That was far from it. Ma'am, you can't be here. This Wong felt his mouth close forcefully as some tape appeared and prevented him from speaking. They looked around and tried to find out who did it before landing on the little child that was smacking Tony on the chest. How? Bruce asked what was on all men's minds. May looked at the sorcerer and apologized. I'm sorry. She turned to her daughter and scolded the young girl. Mary. How many times have I told you to not do that? This wasn't anything new to the woman since Mary did it multiple times before, but she always had to tell her to be careful. The little girl pouted and jumped off the man's chest. Sorry, her eyes turned slightly red before the tape disappeared and they let Wong open his mouth. May nodded and turned to the men. Sorry about that, her father told her to have as much fun as she wanted, so she does what she wants. May motioned for Mary to go to her and continued talking to the men. We came here because Naruto said it would be a great place to be protected. I didn't really get what he meant. She stopped as Tony held up a finger. He looked around and tried to find out where the noise he was hearing was coming from. You guys hear that? He asked and heard some commotion occurring outside the sanctum. He goes to the doors and opens one to see what was happening and saw the chaos that was going on. The billionaire looks inside and motions for the 3 men to follow him. May stay here with Mary, he told the woman, making her nod as the sorcerers, billionaire and doctor all went outside. The little demigod looked up at her mother before running around to look around the sanctum. May sighed and followed her hyper daughter. With Naruto. The redhead knocked out both of the brothers before leaving them to float in space. And no, he wasn't being a dick. But since Thanos had killed much of both men's people, then it was their fight. Right now, he was on a distant planet with both Eric and Pietro. With some strippers. So, why aren't we fighting? Quicksilver asked, worried for his sister. Naruto slapped a woman's ass and turned to look at the Silverhead. Cause, if we were to go and help, then the battle would be over in a quick second, you know, due to your powers being heightened. To be able to run at the speed of light. Well shit, that was already overpowered. And Eric, fuck, the guy was already triple the powerhouse that Chaka was. It was like the king of Wakanda, Steve, and Bucky were all in one person. Just relax, Petey, you know that the seals got him covered. Eric smirked as the alien chick he was with pulled down his zipper. The best fucking team with the best team leader. Also, if we go then maybe Wade might be there, and I told him he can't be breaking the fourth wall with me around him, which got him pissed at me. New York City, New York. Shit. Tony is knocked down by Obsidian and was about to be hit again when the weapon was grabbed by Peter. The teen looks to see Obsidian. Hey man, what's up, Mr. Stark? He turns to look at his mentor to see what the fuck was happening. Kid, where'd you come from? Field trip to Moma. Peter was grabbed by Obsidian and thrown aside. What is this guy's problem, Mr. Stark? Peter asked, getting back up. He's from space. He came here to steal a necklace from a wizard, Tony said, protecting himself from Kull's hammer. But Steven and Wong. Maul lifted several bricks from the ground and turns them into sharp points. He sent them towards Wong and Strange, but the two make portals and boomerang them back towards Maul. The telekinetic moves a car to protect himself, but one spike still hits his head, creating a cut. Angered, the alien uses a broken fire hydrant's water stream to knock Wong back several meters, rendering him unconscious. Shit, Steven snaps a whip of magical energy to bind Ma's hands and yanks, but Ma flies forward with a pole and pins Strange upside down against a building, using the bricks to trap the Sorcerer Supreme. Their powers are quaint, you must be popular with children, Mom used as he tries to grab the amulet holding the time stone, but jerks back when it burns his hand. The sorcerer smirked, it's a simple spell, but quite unbreakable. Snarling, Ma looks directly Steven in the eyes, then I'll take it off your corpse. He says and pulls the wizard away from the building and throws him to the ground. Steven starts the gestures to use the Eye of Agamotto, but utility cables first pin Strange's arms, interrupting the spell and closing the eye, while another cable winds around his torso, then tightens around his throat. You'll find removing a dead man's spell troublesome, he says close to knocking out. His opponent looks down at him and tightens the cables, you'll only wish you were dead, he says as Steven falls unconscious. With Naruto. Told you they looked at the fight that was happening in New York. All three men were now at a brothel, having grown bored of the strippers. They had fucked a few girls before they grew bored again. Sometimes being overpowered was boring, but what can someone do? Nothing but accept it. Yo Naruto, your son is being beamed up, Eric says as Naruto looks at the screen and sighs. Mei is so going to fucking kill him. Wait. Did Steven and Wong put a TV in their sanctum? He was sure they didn't, but knowing Steven it was possible. Meaning it was possible for them to see what was happening outside. Shit. Both Proxima and Corvus looked at the hologram head of their father. Both ashamed and fearful that their father would kill them because of their failure to retrieve the Mind Stone from Earth. So, both of you failed to get the stone, Thanos looked down at them while they nodded. Yes, father, she said as Thanos narrowed his eyes. It was not that he was mad that they did not get the stone, but rather that they were defeated by mere Earthlings. I see, he muttered looking at the two and then at his gauntlet. Well, no matter for now, those stones can wait. Both husband and wife quirked an eyebrow. He looked at them, I need both of you to get Cull and Ebony as quick as possible, if one is dead, then good riddance, if they died, then they died, once all of you are together, I want all of you to meet me at nowhere, there is something that has to be done before all stones are in my hand, Thanos said as he looked at his gauntlet one more time. The two children nodded as they went off to find their brothers. The one thing before all the stones. With Naruto. The Uzumaki looked out of the window of the penthouse he and his crew were staying at. When you can produce riches out of your hand from mere nothing, was quite honestly awesome. But anyways, he was currently looking out of the window because of a feeling he had. His eyes slowly changed to a ruby red color as another clone of him appeared from golden sand. I can feel the copies getting close, meaning that Thanos is coming here. The powers of the five slowly started to seep out of him and enter his clone's body. If he wants the stones, then give it to him, I don't care, just make sure he goes away soon. But that he disappeared in a flash. Not soon after, two ships appeared in the sky. The clone looked at the two and smiled. Such a wonderful fucking day it was. With Thor. Wake. With Mantis saying that, Thor jolts right up. All 6 guardians on the ship immediately bring out their weapons and point them right at the Asgardian. That idiotic red-haired tomato. Thor took several long breaths before turning and looking at the people that were on the ship with him. Who the hell are you guys? Where is Naruto? The Guardians looked at each other for a couple of seconds, annoying Thor in the process, but eventually stepped back as Gamora stepped forward. Why do you want to know? She asked. Thor slightly glares at her, because that fool left me to die when the ship exploded. He leaned on the ship's wall. Gamora looks at him and then remembers back to the wreckage they encountered a while ago, sighing at her husband's doings. He wasn't there when we found you, he was gone by then, most likely to fuck more whore, she said, muttering the last parts. The God of Thunder looks at her and the rest before sitting down. Wonderful, just wonderful. With Naruto. Humans really are strange. Naruto looked at the being next to him and chuckled. Yes, that is true, but you got to admit, they are entertaining, he said. This time the being laughed. True. Both looked at the stars, planets above them. This universe, it's really wonderful, both said at the same time. The informant for Naruto to be able to encounter such a wonderful man like him. Awesome. With Thor. Once they all calmed down, mostly Thor, they gave the Asgardian some soup and a blanket. He looks at the soup before looking up and looking at all 6 guardians, mostly Gamora. Are you one of Naruto's lovers? He said out of nowhere, making all occupants turn to him. Peter, Rocket and Drax look at him questioningly. Groot just didn't care. Mantis blushed a bit. And Gamora, she nodded. More like wife, she said. Now the part of Naruto being her husband was not new to anyone in the ship aside from Thor, but they were still confused on the lover's part. Thor stood up and noticed the mark on her left shoulder, Naruto's mark. He knew a handful of Naruto's lovers back on Earth, but he didn't know if he had lovers aside from that planet until he encountered Brunhild, the last Valkyrie, and he wasn't sure if Gamora was one of them, mostly being suspicious of her protectiveness, but decided to ask anyway. He walked closer to her, making the others get out their weapons again. Hold it there buddy, we can't let you do something to her. Naruto would kill us if anything happened to his wife and the mother of his daughter and son, Rocket said, pointing a blaster at Thor, who stopped the moment Rocket finished. She was the mother of two of Naruto's children. Meaning she was untouchable. So, if anything happened to her then Naruto would be livid. And he did not want to see a livid Naruto. Sighing, he stepped back and looked back at the darkness of space through the windows. With Steve, Sam and Natasha look at both Vision and Wanda. Why the sudden disappearance? Steve asked, looking at Wanda. All four were on a mission a couple of days ago when she had suddenly disappeared without saying anything, and now, they reunite again, but they wish the circumstances would have been different. I'm sorry, but Vision said it was an emergency, and you can see why now, Wanda said as they nodded. They looked at the damage that was done to Vision and saw that it wasn't fixing itself like it usually does. What was the weapon made out of to do this? Ah. Vision held his hand over the Mind Stone as the pain he had been feeling from these past few days doubled. Vision. They went over to him in worry, but he held his hand to stop them. The pain. It was new to him, especially from the Mind Stone. But he could deal. Why? Gasped. His eyes become clouded as he sees a vision of Naruto's powers being extracted from him by a weird-looking machine. All 6 stones' powers going into someone giant with a golden glove on his right hand that had 3 infinity stones already on it. He could feel the powers of the stones. He could feel how powerful the man was going to become when he got Naruto's powers. Once the vision ended, he looked around frantically to make sure he was still in the Quinjet and saw everyone staring at him. We need to go now. Naruto's in trouble. Both Natasha and Wanda looked at each other and looked down a bit but nodded nonetheless, like Steve and Sam. The way he said it. Vision. A highly advanced android, was afraid. But clone Naruto. The clone sat on a chair looking at the 4 in front of him. He chuckled at the reality stone that was on the gauntlet. The collector, wow, he wasn't shocked that a stone was with said being but still with the collector. Thanos looked at Naruto and flexed his gauntlet. I assume you already know why I am here. He asked the one person he hated and feared more than anything. The redhead rolled his eyes and nodded. The other 3 stones, the ones you need to complete this task of yours. The giant nodded. I know of the other 2, but alas, the soul stone hasn't appeared yet, which is weird. He knew of the stone and where it was put, but he'd let the purple giant figure it out if he hadn't already. Thanos smirked. Both time and mind stones are on Earth, which you no doubt already know, and that's about it, he said, playing a bit confused. The smirk on Thanos grew bigger. I do already know of the 2 stones on Earth, but that isn't why I am here. The clone quirked an eyebrow. You have had an encounter with each of the 5 stones and gained some of the powers of each, to the point where you could control all 5 if you had the chance. Both Proxima and Corvus pointed their weapons at him. Something which isn't possible for me yet. Thanos pointed at Naruto, which is the reason why I am here. The stones, I would need your control over the 5 to ensure my victory. The beam shot through both sides of the wall and captured the clone in the center. He looked down and at the sides. They're stealing the control. The powers he had inside him started to seep out and go to the gauntlet. Correction, I am merely borrowing the control. Naruto tried moving but failed. He was stuck having the powers of the 5 leave him and into the gauntlet. So, this is why he was getting close. Minutes later. Modifying his body, the clone made it look as if the whole draining process was too much. He was pale, sweaty, and tired. You should feel happy. Thanos looked at the gauntlet and could feel the stones merge with him, knowing you were the reason everything is going to prosper for everyone. The beams released him, making him drop down on the floor with a hard thud. The giant looks at Naruto one more time. Let's go. The portal appears behind them and takes them away as the clone sighs. Should have fucked her before they left. Welp. One pussy less to piss Thanos off. With real Naruto. Quite honestly, the big guy really did have to get better guards. The moment Thanos appeared where his clone was at, he had appeared on the ship. And within a second, he already had his guards in trance. That was just sad. But that's beside the point. He quite honestly wasn't going to be on the ship for more than a few minutes until he had sensed on his wife's life forces within the ship. It made him curious as to why the hell 2 of his wives got captured. Oh, he had to up their stamina training. No wife of his should ever get captured because they lost in a fight. Be it them versus 100 or 1,000 or even millions of soldiers. No matter what, they should never lose. If it was on purpose then it was fine, but other than that, fuck no. Training should start. Naruto stopped his thinking as a portal opened up a few feet in front of him. He quickly sank in the shadows and waited. Out of the portal his friendly power borrower appeared along with his other 3 children. Thanos turned to look at his children and ushered them to go away. Take as many as you need, but do not fail me. They all bowed and left to set sail towards Earth and get the Mind Stone. Now he started walking to a door where one of his wives was. It's time we had a talk, daughter. The door opened up as Gamora appeared in the room. Naruto turned to where his other wife was being held captive and slowly traveled to said room. But Tony. Yeah, that's on Earth, dipshit, the situation was not good right now. At all. What are you hassling us for? Tony asked. So, you're not with Thanos? Spider-Man asked the attackers. Star-Lord shook his head quickly, Thanos, fuck no. I'm here to kill Thanos before Naruto kills me. He started to hyperventilate before stopping and looking at them again. Wait, who are you? Spider-Man D. Helmets, we're the Avengers, man, he said, slightly wondering why his dad would want to kill the man in front of him. Oh. You're the ones Thor told us about. Mantis said. Tony quirked an eyebrow at her, you know Thor? He asked, a little surprised. Yeah, Star-Lord said, still iffy, tall guy, not that good looking, needed saving. Strange looked at him, where is he now? With Naruto. The redhead had sent a clone to help out his wife while he had gone to Vormir with Thanos and Gamora. He had followed slowly as Red Skull showed both father and daughter where the stone was while also explaining how to get. The Prize Soul holds a special place among the Infinity Stones, you might say it has a certain wisdom, Red said. Tell me what it needs. Looking at the cliff to ensure that whoever possesses it understands its power, the stone demands a sacrifice, he said. Of what? Thanos asked, following to where the man's eyes were looking at. Taking a while to answer, in order to take the stone you must lose that which you love, a soul for a soul, he said gravely. Gamora looks at Red Skull and then at Thanos before laughing at the irony. I can't believe it, all my life I dreamed of a day, a moment when you would get what you deserved. She went closer to him and I was always so disappointed, but now you kill and torture and you call it mercy. Stepping back a bit, the universe has judged you, you asked it for a prize and it told you no, you failed. She might have lost it a bit, and do you want to know why? Because you love nothing. No one, she said. Thanos didn't say anything as he looked at the cliff before turning around and facing Gamora, tears in his eyes. Really? Tears? She asked. Red Skull looked at her, they're not for him. Gamora looks at the Red Skull and as her bitter smile fades, realizes what is about to happen. She shook her head at Thanos fiercely, no, this isn't love. I ignored my destiny once, I cannot do that again, even for you. Gamora looks down for a moment, then back up to see the resolution on his face. She grabs the red jeweled dagger from his belt with lightning reflexes, triggers the blades and stabs herself in the stomach, but it's only bubbles. I'm sorry, little one. He grabs Gamora by the arm and walks towards the cliff. She struggles for a bit but couldn't get out of his grip, no. Naruto breathes in before breathing out. His eyes dilate a bit as he becomes invisible to the eye the moment Thanos throws her of the cliff. Using his speed and time control, he goes to her and directs some blood out of her nose. The blood slowly transformed into another Gamora as the real one disappeared into a portal the Uzumaki created. It would have been trickier, harder if he had touched her, since then he would have had to throw her and he wasn't going to risk her beating his ass later. She was still going to kick his ass, but, you know, only less hurtful. He looked up and then back at the ground. Poofa clone appears next to him and nods before going up to Thanos and blending himself onto the Titan's clothes. Creating a portal, he goes through it, snapping his fingers to let time resume again. Gamora falls straight down as the sky illuminates and a light pulses. It is complete. With Naruto. Gamora crashes onto a bed and looks around quickly before stopping and sighing. Her idiotic and irresistible husband saved her, which he could have done earlier but didn't. The portal opens up in front of her as Naruto appears. She looks at him and he looks at her. I hate you, she says. The redhead grins and lays next to her, love you too. Wakanda. Sam looks up and sees the thing coming straight down towards them. Hey, Cap, we got a situation here. The vessel slams into the shield of the Golden City and explodes due to how powerful it is in defense. Bucky smirks, God, I love this place. Yeah, don't start celebrating yet guys, we got more incoming outside the dome. But Steve and co. Both Captain and Chala look at each other, knowing and not knowing what they'll be facing. Natasha looks at Vision, who was about to leave the table. Vision, get your ass on the table. She looks at Wanda. Once the stone is out of him, you blow it to hell, she said as her harem sister nods. Chala backs away from the window and looks at Okoye while walking to the exit. Evacuate the city. Engage all defense procedures. He stops and looks at Captain America and get this man a shield. Captain turns to him and nods in gratitude. With Naruto. So, my clone is inside the stone, Gamora asked Naruto as he nodded, his arm over her shoulder and groping her right tit. Yep, she blushed at him, pinching her nipple with his sharp nails. And you didn't get it earlier because you didn't want to. She tried to look at him in the eyes, but it was hard to. I could have forcefully grabbed the stone by bending time and space, but then I'd have to fix some ripples that I created, and that's too much work. MHM. Wakanda. Natasha and the others look at the outriders that were trying to get through the wall. Definitely pissed her off. The army of those creatures continued to increase and increase each second, no matter how many died trying to go through the wall, there were many that continued to come. Some managed to get through the barrier, making the border tribe take a knee and raise their shields. The king's guard behind them level their spears over their comrades' shoulders and, on Chala's command, begin to fire at the monsters. Bucky and Bruce also help in shooting down some that were missed. Where is Naruto when you need him? Steve and Chala look at each other, shaking their heads. One knew why said God wasn't here and the other knew another different reason. But Eric and Pietro. A seal on their necks pulse and a blue aura surrounds them both. They look at the people in front of them and begin their slaughter. They should have kept their mouths shut and followed orders, but no, they wanted to start a war against all three. Death seems like a good punishment to give. But Thor. He needs the axe. Where's the handle? Tree, help me find the handle. Tree shouted at Groot, making said tree creature look at Thor sadly and then at the two pieces of Stormbreaker. He scowls in determination and stands. He extends his fingers and grows them at extraordinary speed. Grabbing both parts, while also crying out at the pain from the hot parts, he slams both parts together and locks them. With a mighty cry, Groot raises it above his head before chopping his own arm off at the right length. Completing Stormbreaker. The crackle of lighting appears from Thor's fingers as does around Stormbreaker. But Hela. Marrying and fucking in hell was not how she imagined getting married and having sex for the first time. She though it would have been a bit weird, but it was actually very, very, very fun. She also never imagined getting married to a deity that was with other women, but where was the fun in marrying only one person for the rest of her eternal life when she can now have fun with a deity who has multiple women at his side, and she means multiple women. He was a god at fucking, he gave her a child, he made her queen, and he sure as hell made her feel emotions that she hadn't felt before. Who the heck would be crazy to leave that behind just to rule Asgard? It would have been nice, but you can't always have what you want. She learned that the hard way. That fucking idiot Surtur and him destroying Asgard. But anyways. She felt her hand twitch slightly and smirked. Her dear second little brother had gotten himself a new weapon, and from the feeling, it was the one weapon she had never gotten a chance to see or fight against. Don't disappoint me now, Thor. Round 2. Nothing like fighting against family for the throne and survival to make someone's blood pump. Ace, sweetie, can you come here really quick, one of your uncles is about to join the fight. Coming, mother. Nothing beats mother-daughter time than watching a battle that was in another planet, fighting for the fate of the universe. Wakanda. A beam of rainbow colors shot down from the sky and into the middle of the battle, killing some monsters with it before an axe came out and killed more with it. It traveled a bit and killed some of the monsters that were on top of the Hulkbuster, Chala, Steve, and Natasha before it returned to the light as a hand grabbed it. The light cuts off and shows Thor with Groot and Rocket by his side. The Avengers look at Thor with astonishment as Proxima and Cull Obsidian looked at the God of Thunder with unease. Bruce helmets and laughs at seeing his friend join the fight, you guys are so screwed now. Thor looks at the two children of Thanos and glares at them before directing his attention at the Outriders. Charging forward with his new friends and new weapon, he begins to channel his powers. Bring me Thanos. Lightning gathered and surrounded him as he launched himself into the air, his powers channeling onto Stormbreaker before shooting straight down in the middle of a horde of Outriders. Killing off many with a blast and creating a crater where they stood. Proxima and Cull looked and snarled at the outcome of the Asgardian joining. The Asgardian and Earthlings just didn't know when to give up. But fine. If they want to add a power boost with Thor coming into the battlefield, then they might as well do the same. Proxima clicked on a button on her spear as Cull did the same. Aside from getting good dick from her former lover and messing her up to the point where her husband no longer satisfied her, she also had access to some weapons and items in his vault. Thus, her spear and her brother's hammer upgrades. A spear that could kill thousands and a hammer that could create craters, well shit. She just hopped that female earthling with the blonde hair didn't cross her path. That mark on her neck, her former lover's mark, was already a major power boost. Bigger than the Asgardian's new weapon. And again she could beat her to a bloody pulp and have her summon Naruto just to see her in that state. Yeah. Natasha felt someone looking straight at her and turned to see who it was. She saw the one who faced against her before when they were rescuing Vision and Wanda, looking at her with hate and glee. Grabbing her batons, she clicked on a small button on the bottom. Red fire with white lightning surrounded the two weapons as she pointed one towards Proxima. She didn't know why, probably the smugness, hate and glee on Proxima's face, but she knew one thing. You're mine, bitch. He looked at the trees around the planet and shook his head in amusement. Every single time in every single universe dimension, they have these idiots who think that they are the most powerful beings in the universe just because they could destroy a planet with a single shot of their powers. Every single time. And guess what? Every single one of those times, those beings get killed by him due to their own arrogance. It was fun, yes. But they are just really annoying to deal with. Thus, he was here now at this current moment. So, tell me again. What was it that you were saying? Naruto looked down at his foot and smirked at the struggling primordial. Ego. Its head was right at the bottom of the redhead's foot while its arms were trying to get his leg off, trying to use all its strength, but to no avail. Get off Mga. Ego was cut off when Naruto quickly kicked the being in its throat, making it choke a bit. He sighed and shook his head. This was just supposed to be a small visiting trip since he had sensed a source of power in the whole thing. Then he met this primordial and next thing he knew, Naruto was kicking this thing's ass. It was just sad, honestly. The whole fight, if you would call it that, took just 30 seconds. I never find a good fight. You know what? Naruto backed up a little. I don't care anymore, he said shaking his head, the smirk slowly turning into a disappointed frown. Just like the others who were like it, he knew that getting an apology from it would take at least 100 more times of beating it senseless and almost close to death before he got it. No point in staying here and waiting. Though it might be dumb in other people's opinions to just let their enemy go to learn and grow stronger. Naruto also knew that Ego was at full power when it fought. No amount of extra training would make it grow stronger. Might it learn from this fight and get smarter? A little, but it wouldn't even help it in future fights. Naruto was just playing with it through the whole fight and will continue to do so. He knew it, Ego knew it. No point in training and learning when it wouldn't do shit in the end. The outcome will always be the same every time. Ego will always be an ant fighting against real primordial entity. Sigh, he turned his back towards the primordial and started to walk away slowly. Might as well go back to Earth and see how these wizards have progressed with their magic. He stopped in his tracks when he felt the Celestials create life. Not just a pet or something small where it would not disrupt the flow of life. No, he felt them create things that were bioengineered. Once someone creates a new life, they create a new soul. Something that would always be noticed. Let's just see how perfect these beings are, he chuckled as he closed his eyes and encased himself in dark matter. Never mind the wizards, he had to see these beings. The fun that will come from watching them. They will learn magic and about Dormammu one way or another by themselves. Years later. Naruto looked at both sides and shook his head again. The deviants thought that the celestial that created them had given them Earth to do as they pleased. This was theirs, and the Eternals were just intruding, the other Celestials betraying the agreement they had among them. The Eternals on the other hand were just here because the Celestials had sent them. One side was the good side and the other was the bad side. Each side viewing the other side as the other. Was he here to stop them? This fighting that was happening among these two groups and the civil war brewing amongst the Eternals? Answer? No. Why would he? They had to figure out all of this on themselves. Sure, he had lovers amongst them, but he wasn't going to be this knight in shining armor for them. The boring. For now, though he'll see how it all turns out. The masters Akka the wizards had started building the 3 sanctuaries to fight against Dormammu and protect Earth. It took them a couple of 100 years, but they finally managed to become decent wizards. Not masters per se. Just enough to fight an entity like Dormammu. It was funny though when they had told him the way the sanctuaries were going to be built and how they were going to look. On the outside it may look different, but on the inside, it was another matter. PFTT he could have done that with one single seal. But nonetheless, they were making progress. He quirked an eyebrow. Vibranium. Well, more like a piece of it was expanding and it had grown a flower. Interesting. He had expected the tribes to keep on fighting for the land for a while more, but it seemed that Bast had decided to interfere and create a champion. Well. Guess he had to set a goddess straight. All that happened on Earth had to go through him. Unless he did not care and let it happen because it would be fun, nothing escapes him. Anyways though, the herb flower had grown and she had given her champion visions to go and get it to finally end the conflict happening between all 5 tribes. It was powerful enough. Add to it. Vibranium was very powerful and if they kept on fighting for it. It would just be left on the ground until they had finally managed to work together. Fuck. Seemed like he now had to pay a visit to these 5 tribes too. He wanted to watch these 2 species keep on fighting. The sparks and yells. But he was curious and had a duty. Naruto whirled his finger as his shadow came up from behind him, grabbed him and sucked him down into the endless. Wakanda. He came up from the ground but quickly camouflaged himself to not be noticed by any tribe. It would be alarming for anyone to see someone coming up from the ground like the dead. Doubt he would even get out a word before they shot him with spears and arrows. Now. Bast, let's see who this champion of yours is, he said as he went towards where the power from the herb was being emitted. A couple of minutes later and he arrived. Same time as the champion. Naruto chuckled as he saw the champion. She chose well it seemed. A shaman and a strong warrior from what he saw. The Uzumaki stayed back and watched as everything ensued. The crushing, to the drinking, to the process of the power becoming one with him. The shaman young warrior slowly stood up and flexed his hand, his legs, everything. It was new to him to feel that powerful that quick. Sadly though, he would have to do that later. Naruto coughed into his hand and slowly walked towards him, undoing his camouflage. The shaman turned towards him in alarm and quickly went into combat position, but was shocked and taken back when the stranger had then appeared before him. The redhead's eyes dilated for a second and then went back to normal the next. He wasn't going to speak English to someone who didn't. He needed a little bit of information. See of Iasan and Shinsho wako inshitsheli. Kodwin Deneshishini Nathixakazi wako. Kuyakubo owning Saki, congratulations on your change champion. But I have business with your goddess. And if you don't mind, Naruto hit all the pressure points on the shaman's body, making him fall down to the ground limp. He was still awake and panicking, but could not move anything. Snappy snapped his fingers, casting a jinjutsu over the area in case anybody came. Pumla, Oku Akui Kukukathaza. Kadwai Sathixakazi Sako Senza Intengap handle KWEMVUME relax, this will not bother you. But your goddess did something without my permission, he said as he tapped the warrior's forehead and made him fall unconscious. Inside the shaman. The warrior woke up and looked around in frantic. Whoever that man was, he was something. Not something else but something. Behind him, he heard a chuckle. If it were anybody else they would have most likely killed you just for thinking that, Bishenga, Naruto said, walking right up next to said warrior. The shaman went rigid seeing that something come next to him. If you are wondering how we can now speak the same language, we are in this universe's god realm. If you would, languages in the realm of gods didn't exist, it was just one. Thus, it was easy to understand one another. No barriers. No questions. Bishenga nodded slowly but did not look at the redhead. I see, he quietly said, trying not to ask many questions in case it would be rude, before asking him one thing that he had said before coming into this realm. You said the goddess Bast had done something you did not give her permission to do. If I may ask, what exactly did she do? He was her champion, she gave him the powers to stop all the fighting amongst the tribes, and he wasn't going to just let anybody or anything talk down on her. Even if it did sound like he was in a higher position than Bast. Naruto looked at him and then turned back to look at the field straight ahead of them. Follow me, you'll get your answers. Bishenga didn't like the answer, but he nonetheless followed a little behind, seeing as how the person thing in front of him was still unknown to him. Never just follow blindly, always stay back in case it was a trap. A couple of minutes later and both men arrived in front of a cave. Naruto turned his head to look back at Bishenga. You've only seen a blurry image of Bast in your dreams, due to her not wanting to show any of her forms to life, she says, is beneath her. Bishenga slightly agreed. He was not going to go against a god's beliefs. They were technically beneath her. Today though, is your lucky day. You'll be the first ever human to see her in her animal form, Naruto said, walking into the cave with the young shaman walking behind him, slightly closer in anticipation to see his goddess. Taking a few steps inside the cave and torches that were invisible from the outside, lit up. They walked a couple more seconds inside until they reached two golden doors. Typical of gods. Always flashy. Is that you, Sekhmet? That is rare, you usually don't visit unless there is something important to talk about amongst us, they heard from the other side of the doors. Naruto smiled and pressed his hand on the golden doors. Bishenga looked at him and then the doors before noticing they started to melt down onto the floor. Sorry to disappoint, but Sekhmet isn't the one here today, instead you got me, and let's just say that I am a little pissed on how some pussy decided to do whatever the hell she wanted in my world, the Uzumaki said, walking past the melted doors with Bishenga behind him. Inside, Bast in her panther form, stood up from the floor in a quick second and slowly backed away to stay away from him, while also looking behind him at the only escape there was. Now Naruto smacked his foot on the floor, making seals spread all over the room. The doors might be melted, but it doesn't mean the seals will let her leave. She was stuck, she knew it. She wasn't going to get out of this one. Not even her father or even both pantheons would be able to stop the being in front of her. Bast had played with the wrong entity. According to all pantheons, all entities and gods, the number one rule when it comes to me, no matter if it is just a glimpse, the moment I put a foot in your home or your pantheon's territory, said gods are supposed to greet me. Now Bishenga knew this was a higher god. The way Bast had reacted was scared to meet the god right next to him in the eyes and was looking for a way out. She had done something the god did not take kindly to. So why is it you or anyone in this pantheon did not greet me and is still not bowing? Bast, Naruto said with one of his eyes turning red with a slitted pupil in the middle. Bast felt a force make her whole body heavy and make her crash down onto the floor. Her hands and knees slowly started to go into kneeling position until she was kneeling in front of Naruto and her champion, who was staring at the scene in shock and a bit of horror, seeing his goddess kneel. A god kneel amongst another. Add to it, he did not know who this god was yet besides the fact that they were higher than gods. It terrified and shocked him. Better, Naruto said, looking at her in said position. She didn't respond and kept looking down on the ground to avoid contact with him. Don't worry, your siblings and the rest of the family will face the same treatment that you are receiving. It is both Pantheon's punishment. A wooden chair came up from the ground beneath him. He sat on it and smirked down at her, which is a shame since that was a rule set on you guys, but I don't enforce it since I don't really care just as long as you all know you will never be higher than me. He rested his head on his arm, but it seems you think the opposite, Bast. You seem to think that you are above and do whatever you fucking want without my permission. My permission, the one being's permission who you need permission to do anything, he said. I didn't mean to, Lord Uzumaki, but those Bast tried to say out but got interrupted by said Lord. It was never about the tribes for you, Bast. I know you gods. I know you don't care about humans, they are below you. According to you gods, he rolled his eyes for you, it was just about having a champion. The only times you gods give a single care about said humans. You want to show your champion is the best out of all of those out there from the other gods. Naruto looked at Bishenga, telling him right there his answer. She had not asked him permission to create a champion to represent her. He was just created because she wanted to show to all the other gods that her champion was better than any other god. Answering his question, she did a selfish stupid move going against a god's back. So now leaves the question. What am I to do? Bast and Bishenga both paled and went rigid. I can't get rid of your champion, he is now in the game board that made the human feel better, but you need to be punished, Bastum. Get rid of your powers. No. Kill you. No. Take away your home. No, all of the options made said goddess feel nervous and scared at the choices he can make to punish her. Oh. He stood up as a dark goop seeped from his hand and fell onto the fool, forming a pool of blackness. Sekhmet, along with the other gods, failed to stop you from following one rule. A simple rule. And to me it seems like she can't rule this pantheon as well as I thought she would. Guess, we just have to replace her. The pool started to rise, making Bishenga back up a little, and started to form the silhouette of tall muscular male. Naruto turned to look at his shadow and nodded, bring Sekhmet. If she resists, cut off all her limbs until she can't fight anymore, he said. The shadow went out the door and into the realm to find said goddess. The redhead turned to look at the silhouette and also gave it a nod with the dark figure doing the same motion. Lord Uzbas tried to get something out to appeal. To save her sister in all but blood. But he forced her to stay quiet. She was going to watch as Sekhmet died in front of her and she, Bast, was going to be the one responsible. Just for one thing. One stupid thing. Fuck. My lord, the dark figure returned with said goddess right next to him in a matter of seconds. She didn't have time to react when he had appeared behind her and sucked her into the void dimension, only to pop up within Bast's chambers. Audar, a spear of gold and silver shot into her abdomen faster than anyone had realized. Sekhmet, Naruto called out to her as she slowly turned to him, the spear in her with golden blood slowly coming out. The moment she looked at him, her eyes widened. I give each ruler just one chance to rule their pantheon, right, Sekhmet? But it seems you can't do that. It isn't the easiest thing to do when you have gods all over and enemies amongst each other, but I would expect the leader of each pantheon to enforce the rules and set them right so that they won't have to face their ends by my hands. A chain shot up from the ground and wrapped around Bast's neck. Yet, you Sekhmet could not do that with your fellow sister here. The goddess looked at her sister from the corner of her eyes. She broke the one stupid rule you gods have amongst each other and also did the one thing that I would have assumed was already forbidden to do and known to all. He grabbed the spear. You gods are in my domain. I am the one who says yes or no. No one decides to do whatever they want like they are above me. I am the one who is above all you gods. I am letting you stay here. I am letting you have sections. I am letting you all live. He turned the spear to hurt the female more. You let your sister create a champion without my permission. Let her do whatever she wanted because both of you are so close that you trusted her and didn't think she would betray that, yet she did, looking at her straight in the eyes as said goddess felt her powers stop, not leave, but stop. Luckily for her, her life will be spared since she put her champion in the game. Sadly though, you on the other hand, Sekhmet, will not have that opportunity. The black figure approached her and stood behind her. You did not rule properly, Sekhmet. You have failed as a ruler to all the gods in this pantheon and failed as a god. Naruto pulled out the spear as the dark figure began to envelop her. Therefore, Sekhmet, warrior goddess and goddess of healing, daughter of Ra and Hathor. You are sentenced to death due to your assistance in helping the goddess Bast in the creation of a champion, an act that is forbidden to do unless given permission from me. Your titles, powers, everything will be transferred to a new host who will rule with an iron fist and better than you did as a ruler. All who defy or try to challenge me in this decision will face death. The figure enveloped everything but her head. He looked at her in the eyes as he said one final thing. Like I said before, Sekhmet, your trust in your sister was the one that caused your downfall and the one that cost your death. You will be known as a failure who could not even control one god and will be known as an example to the other gods should they try this again. I am above you all. Goodbye Sekhmet. But that said, the dark figure enveloped Sekhmet. It stayed in the outline of Sekhmet and remained in said outline for a couple of seconds before changing its form. It didn't stop until a new body was standing before all of them, having the same body as Sekhmet but a human face with a few distinct animal features on it. She stood at a height higher than what gods would normally be, which was 8 feet. She stood at 10 feet in height, Naruto wanting her to show that she was above the Pantheon's gods in both power and height. Ass looked at the feet of the new god and tried to remove the chains but couldn't. Her sister was dead and now known as a failure of a god because of her. This new god taking her place. She hated this, she hated these chains. She wanted to fight back even if it meant death in order to set it right, everything right. But she couldn't. Naruto turned his attention towards her and went towards her. Slowly crouching to be in the same height. He chuckled and shook his head. The gods of all the pantheons will know what happened today and you, Bast, will be there to tell everyone who asks what happened. And don't think you're off the hook yet. I know you. He put his finger on her neck, a small spiral tattoo seal appearing and spreading all around her neck before vanishing into her skin. I say come, you come. I say kneel, you place your head on the ground. I say lick, you do it like your life depends on it. I say kill a god, you kill them. Even if they are family. She nodded by force and balled her fist. But Naruto smirked as Bishenga also kneeled when said god turned towards him. Relax Bishenga, you're just a pawn. You're not at fault here so relax. I won't hurt the tribes when you finally control them or take away your powers so like I said. Relax. He did not relax. He was still kneeling, which Naruto didn't really hold it against him. He just killed one of his pantheon's gods. Let's go back to the real world. Wouldn't want the tribes to start looking for you. The champion nodded and followed Naruto as he undid the seal and slowly started to walk out of the cave. Remember Bast, I am always watching. The end. Thanks for watching. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.